Welcome to our noon edition of Arirang News. Here are the stories making the headlines at this hour. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un led the regime's first nuclear counterattack drills on Monday. This comes in response against South Korea and the United States for their latest joint air drills. Seoul and Washington are holding a fresh round of talks in Hawaii this week to discuss the sharing of costs for maintaining U.S. troops stationed in South Korea. The talks are taking place earlier than expected. An advisory committee on international economic issues was held to further discuss the impact of recent conflicts in the Middle East. Finance Minister Choi stated that amid heightened political tensions and uncertainty from the Iran-Israel conflict, it is critical to monitor the impact on the South Korean economy. Starting with North Korea's latest nuclear counteroffensive, leader Kim Jong-un has guided the regime's first nuclear counterattack drills on Monday. The drills came as the regime blamed Seoul and Washington's recent air drills for raising tensions on the peninsula. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung starts us off.
North Korea has revealed it staged tactical drills simulating a nuclear counterattack using super-large multiple rocket launchers for the very first time. The training guided by the regime's leader Kim Jong-un on Monday was focused on strengthening the regime's nuclear counteroffensive using 600mm multiple rocket launchers. The North state-run newspaper Rodong Sinmun reported Tuesday morning that the rockets hit its island target with a range of 352 kilometers. Kim was reportedly satisfied with their accuracy. The regime said the drills were conducted to send a clear warning to its enemies, as it denounced Seoul and Washington's recent joint air drills for raising tensions. South Korea had monitored the launch since liftoff. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff detected what are presumed to have been multiple short-range ballistic missiles at around 3 p.m. Monday, launched toward the EC from the Pyongyang area. According to the JCS, the missiles traveled around 300 kilometers. The flight distance from Pyongyang to South Korea's Gaedongdae military headquarters is also approximately 300 kilometers. The military said it has strengthened surveillance and vigilance in preparation for additional launches and is closely cooperating with the U.S. and Japan to maintain a full readiness stance. The JCS strongly condemned the launch, calling it a provocation that seriously threatens peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. The U.S. State Department also denounced the latest provocation and hinted that this issue will be addressed during Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to China this week. Monday's launch comes 3 days after the regime's test launch of a super-large warhead designed for the Hwasal 1-3 strategic cruise missile and the test firing of a new anti-aircraft missile on Friday. It's also the first ballistic missile launch in 3 weeks, which follows the test firing of an intermediate-range hypersonic missile by the North earlier this month. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
In the meantime, arbitrary arrest, detention, torture, and public executions are still rampant in North Korea. That's according to the U.S. State Department in its annual report on human rights in the regime. Lee Seung-jae has more on the report.
The U.S. State Department on Monday released the 2023 country reports on human rights practices, where it highlighted North Korea's continued human rights violations. While this year's report was generally similar to last year's, the 2023 report emphasized North Koreans being repatriated after COVID-19 restrictions begin to loosen in the regime. Repatriation has been a key issue for the U.S. amid concerns that North Koreans who are caught after escaping the North could face harsh treatment after being sent back home. The report also noted other serious human rights issues, such as public executions, torture, arbitrary arrest, and detention. The annual report pointed out involuntary or coercive medical practices, harsh prison conditions, as well as cases of coerced abortion or forced sterilization and human trafficking. It further elaborated on other human rights violations, such as those attempting to leave the country without permission, being killed on the spot, or publicly executed, while guards at political prison camps are said to be under orders to shoot to kill anyone attempting to escape. It added that freedom of expression, movement, assembly, and association are prohibited, with an assessment that basic human rights are not guaranteed in North Korea. Every year, the State Department publishes a report on the human rights situation in countries around the world, including South Korea and North Korea, which is required by law to be submitted to Congress. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Chief negotiators of Seoul and Washington are meeting in Hawaii this week to discuss how much each side will pay to keep American troops stationed here in South Korea. The deal that comes from three-day talks will be applied in the year 2026. Yoon has the details.
South Korea and the United States' new round of talks on defense cost sharing starts on Tuesday local time in Hawaii. This is the first meeting since Seoul and Washington named their chief negotiators early last month. Lee Tae-woo, formerly the Consul General in Sydney, will lead South Korea's delegation. He will engage in talks with a U.S. delegation led by Linda Specht, a senior advisor and U.S. lead negotiator for security agreements at the State Department, who on Monday said the United States seeks fair and equitable outcomes in the Special Measures Agreement for defense cost sharing aimed at strengthening and maintaining the alliance with South Korea. The 12th Special Measures Agreement outlines the cost-sharing arrangement between South Korea and the U.S. for approximately 25,500 U.S. Forces Korea personnel. Since 1991, South Korea has been shouldering some of the costs of stationing of U.S. troops in Korea, including labor, logistics, and construction costs. The two countries have regularly engaged in negotiations on how to share these expenses, with the latest deal signed in 2021 and set to remain in effect until the end of next year.
I will do my best to ensure that a rational level of defense cost sharing is achieved to provide a stable stationing environment for the deployment of U.S. Forces Korea, an essential element of this combined defense posture between South Korea and the U.S.
The early talks on the Special Measures Agreement, despite its effective start date in 2026, are viewed as an unusual move, with speculation that it is aimed at securing an agreement before the potential re-election of former U.S. President Donald Trump. During his presidency, Trump demanded that South Korea pay up to $5 billion a year. However, the South Korean Foreign Ministry has dismissed this speculation, saying that the early preparations are not related to the November election. Under the latest Special Measures Agreement, South Korea agreed to a 13.9% increase in its contribution from 2019 to $1.3 billion for 2021. Yoon, Arirang News.
The leaders of South Korea and Romania are holding a bilateral summit on Tuesday to discuss cooperation on industry and energy. President Yoon greeted President Klaus Johannes at the Yongsan presidential office with a welcoming ceremony before heading into their summit talks. According to the presidential office, Yoon plans to discuss strategic cooperation between the countries in the fields of defense and nuclear power plants. After wrapping up their talks, the two leaders will hold a signing ceremony of bilateral deals and then have lunch. South Korea and Romania established diplomatic relations in the year 1990 and elevated their ties to a strategic partnership in the year 2008. President Yoon has announced new names for his most senior aides for political affairs. He also pledged to be more open with the public and the National Assembly. Our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young with the details.
President Yoon has vowed to better handle communication with the public and the opposition as he named a new Chief of Staff and Senior Political Secretary following the recent general election defeat for his ruling party. Speaking to the press on Monday, Yoon announced five-time lawmaker Jong as his most high-ranking official on political affairs, citing his 15 years of experience in journalism, followed by various roles in politics, including National Assembly Deputy Speaker. Jong also served as former President Lee Myung-bak's Senior Secretary for Political Affairs.
Unlike his predecessors with bureaucratic backgrounds, Jong Jin-seok's political experience is expected to help the administration reform its style of handling state affairs by improving public and political engagement.
Yoon also named a new Senior Secretary for Political Affairs, Hong Chol-ho. He cited the two-term lawmaker's experience as an entrepreneur of a large food franchise, saying Hong is expected to communicate well within political circles and pick up on public sentiment.
지난 2년은 우리가 이 나라를 어떤 나라로 만들 것인지에 대한 어떤 콘텐츠를 저희가 디자인하고 지금은 이제 지난 2년간 저희가 세워놓은 것을 어떻게 더 국민들과 소통해서 또 고칠 거는 고치고 국민들의 어떤 동의를 더 받아낼 수 있는지 또 정치권과도 대화를 해서 또 어떻게 이것을 현실화시킬 수 있는지 이제는 그런 점에 좀 주력을 할 생각입니다.
The president's first press briefing this year, and 17 months since his impromptu questions and answers with media, comes days after he acknowledged the need for stronger communication. Upon his ruling party's electoral defeat, the leader last week apologised for failing to reflect the wishes of the people, saying he had been the first to fail in communication. After inviting opposition Lee Jae-myung to the presidential office this week, Yoon on Monday said no agendas were set, but hinted he would like to discuss how to work together to improve people's welfare. Lee, meanwhile, has said he will propose handing out 250,000 won for all Koreans as a welfare policy, which has triggered concerns over fiscal stability among his critics. However, a consultation to arrange a meeting between the top office and the Democratic Party of Korea was cancelled on Monday. While the opposition called it a unilateral move, it appears the top office decided the consultation would be more appropriate after the new political aides were appointed. Also, as speculation continues over the replacement of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, who also offered to resign after the ruling party's defeat, Yoon said a new appointment was likely to take some time. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The Finance Ministry held an advisory committee on international economic issues on Tuesday to further discuss the impact of recent conflicts in the Middle East. Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok stated that amid heightened political tensions and uncertainty from the fighting between Iran and Israel, it is critical to monitor its impact on South Korea's economy. He also added that the government will respond with thorough preparedness. The committee was composed of experts from Seogang University, Asan Institute for Policy Studies, the Islam Research Center, and other Middle East experts. South Korea's wholesale prices rose for the fourth consecutive month in March. According to the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, the country's producer price index, a barometer of future inflation, was up 0.2% compared to the previous month. The price index of agricultural goods increased by 1.3%, as the cost of cabbages soared by 36% and seaweed prices climbed by around 20%. The Bank of Korea explained that the increase in seaweed prices was due to a decrease in domestic supply as export volumes increased significantly. Opening statements have been made by both the prosecution and the defense at the Donald Trump hush money trial in New York. The prosecution argues that Trump is attempting to cover up a scandal constitute election fraud, but the former U.S. president says the trial is the Democrats' way of putting the brakes on his election campaigning. Yoon reports.
On Monday, the prosecution and Donald Trump's defense made their opening statements at the former president's hush money trial, the first criminal trial of a former U.S. president. The final jurors were seated on Friday, and all eyes will be on New York Supreme Court Judge Juan Merchant as he oversees the first criminal trial of a former U.S. president. Trump has pleaded not guilty to all 34 charges of falsifying business records related to an accusation that a payment of $130,000 was made to porn star Stormy Daniels in return for keeping quiet about an alleged encounter between Daniels and Trump. For opening statements, prosecutor Matthew Colangelo argued election fraud, saying that Donald Trump had a scheme to corrupt the 2016 election by silencing people who were about to come forward with embarrassing stories that may hurt his campaign. The prosecution argued that it wasn't political spin or a communication strategy to avoid bad press, but that it was a planned and highly coordinated scheme of illegal hush money expenditures. Meanwhile, opening statements from Trump's defense attacked the case as baseless, saying the former president did nothing illegal, arguing that Trump was trying to protect his family, reputation, and name brand. While leaving the courtroom on Monday, Trump downplayed the trial, calling it a very minor bookkeeping case, and that it was indeed about an election, not the 2016 election, but the one this November, saying that it was a Democratic attempt to disrupt his chances at reclaiming the presidency.
And over here, I did nothing wrong also. This is a Biden witch hunt to keep me off the campaign trail. So far, it's not working because my poll numbers are higher than they've ever been because the public understands that it's a witch hunt. Thank you very much.
The first witness for the prosecutors was former National Enquirer publisher David Pecker, also a longtime friend of Trump's. He took the witness stand before court broke for the day, and his testimony is expected to continue on Tuesday. Yoon, Arirang News.
The South Korean men's under-23 football team defeated Japan 1-0 on Monday to finish top of Group B in the Asian Football Confederation U23 Asian Cup. With the rivals facing off at Jassim bin Hamad Stadium in Arirang, just west of Doha, South Korean midfielder Kim Min-woo, a second-half substitute, scored a headed goal in the 75th minute. After winning all three matches in the group stage, South Korea moves on to the quarterfinals, where they will face Group A runner-up Indonesia, led by former South Korean boss Shin Tae-yong. The top three teams at the competition are guaranteed a spot at this summer's Paris Olympics. The match will be played at the Abdullah bin Khalifa Stadium in Doha at 8:30 p.m. Thursday local time or 2:30 a.m. Friday Korea time. South Korea could soon officially become a multicultural nation by OECD standards, with 5% of its population comprising foreign nationals. And that could continue to rise fast amid the nation's aging population and low birth rates. So is enough being done to better accommodate them as the country continues to rely on these foreign nationals to maintain productivity? Our Kim Do-yeon sat down with an expert at the forefront of policy sharing for foreign residents of South Korea.
The number of foreigners with the E9 non-professional working visa has grown fast, with around 165,000 issued in 2024, especially as the productive population declines. The country will keep needing more of these workers. But unless it acts now, it won't continue to be an easy option. That's according to Professor Kim Seok-ho of Seoul National University, who leads a special subcommittee on co-living with foreign workers under the Presidential Committee for National Cohesion.
Japan and Taiwan, just 5 to 10 years ago, had very strict policies on foreign workers. They had conservative policies towards them, but that all changed. With this comparison, there's not much time left for South Korea to gain an advantage over these countries in hosting foreign workers, as the country is now competing with others for a quality foreign workforce.
This special committee is already the third one related to the foreign population in South Korea. As it focuses on the workers, it has four main goals to tackle, as the country has a long way to go in accommodating foreign workers: a more customized workforce supply system and a means to attract and cultivate overseas talent being one among others. To achieve this, different suggestions will be considered, including a comprehensive statistical analysis.
We think creating a database with the Justice Ministry to check on who comes in and out of South Korea when it comes to the workforce would be useful. But in reality, South Korea doesn't have any comprehensive data on foreign workers.
Even President Yoon last year emphasized that the past governments had put off the responsibility to take care of the foreign population, as he made an unusual appearance to participate in a subcommittee meeting on this particular issue.
또 불합리한 인식이면 국민들의 그 생각이 좀 바뀔 수 있도록 변화를 또 이끌어내고, 그렇게 해서 국제사회 어디에 내놓더라도 부끄럽지 않은 글로벌 중추국가로서의 그 역할과 그 위상에 부합하는 그러한 정책을 저희가 가지고 있어야 된다고 생각합니다.
In fact, that's one of the most important duties of this ongoing subcommittee. National Cohesion Committee Chair Kim Han-gil said foreign workers need to be part of a, quote, new us, as he kicked it off last month.
Please explore ways to not only view immigrant workers as mere tools of labour, but as new members of our community who can work and grow together as a new us.
Professor Kim said it's impossible for the ongoing committee to come up with answers to all the problems that foreigners face to make their lives in South Korea better. But the new us aspect should certainly be one of the top priorities.
It's not just about forcing immigrants to adapt to living here. It's equally about us adapting to them.
The subcommittee will run for another 2 months and then report its findings during its 100 days of operation to the president. The point of this special subcommittee, Professor Kim said, is to make sure that citizens are included in the process of coming up with good answers. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In the Philippines, around 17,000 Filipino and American troops began a joint military training exercise on Monday involving maritime drills in the South China Sea. The annual Balikatan, or shoulder-to-shoulder drills, will last until May 10th amid tensions with China over Beijing's expansive claims in the disputed South China Sea. Tensions over the waters have resulted in a diplomatic row and heated maritime encounters between the Philippines and China. This year's drill is the second largest joint military exercise, closely following last year's in scale. Reports have said that the drills will simulate a retake of islands near Taiwan. The Chinese military criticized the drills, saying that the sea should not be an arena for gunboat diplomacy. Moving over to the US now, and a crackdown on pro-Palestinian protests at universities that saw arrests made and classes shifted online. Police arrested 47 demonstrating students at Yale University on Monday who had blocked traffic as they called for the university to cut ties with weapons manufacturers. On the same day, Columbia University in New York halted in-person classes after tent encampments were set up on university grounds last week. Over 100 protesters were arrested at Columbia the week before, with some students also suspended. New York City Mayor Eric Adams blasted protesters for blatant anti-Semitism, but organizers hit back, saying individuals making inflammatory comments did not represent them. Now to Gaza, and news of a Palestinian baby girl delivered from the womb of her mother who had been killed in an Israeli airstrike attack last week. The baby was delivered in an emergency C-section, weighing just 1.4 kilograms from a dead mother, Sabrine al-Sakani, who was 30 weeks pregnant. The newborn girl was reportedly stable after being placed in an incubator in a hospital in the city of Rafah. The infant's father and sister were also killed in the attack. In sports news, Inter Milan have won the top Italian football league, Serie A, securing the Scudetto with 5 games to spare after their 2-1 win over AC Milan on Monday. Inter's Francesco Acerbi and Marcus Thuram scored 1 each before AC Milan's Fikayo Tomori got a goal back in the 80th minute. Inter Milan dominated this season, having had only 1 league defeat and only 18 goals conceded, the fewest in Serie A. Securing their 20th Serie A title, Inter Milan now have the second most titles from Italy's top league, only behind Juventus. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. After an unexpectedly sunny Monday in the capital, now we are back to cloudy skies with spring rain in the forecast. Rain will start from Jeju and the east of Gangwon-do this afternoon before spreading nationwide by late tonight. And this band of rain will continue into tomorrow. East of Gangwon-do could see up to 40 millimeters. The rest of the country could see up to 30 millimeters of showers. Meanwhile, Gyeongsang-do provinces and Jeju Island will be quite windy as well. As the rain clouds move in late tonight in central regions, it should be as warm as yesterday during the day with an expected high of 25 degrees Celsius here in the capital. But the rest of the country should notice cooler highs at 19 degrees in Daegu, and East Coast regions continue to see highs in the mid-teens. After a rainy and cool Wednesday, sunshine and warmth return on Thursday, and it should stay that way through the weekend. But it looks like it's going to rain on Jeju Island on Friday and Saturday. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for you at this hour. We'll bring you more updates at the same time tomorrow.